Assalamu alaikum, good morning and welcome to News and Views on Salam Media, your home of humanitarian journalism. My name is Shabnam Palesa Mohamed, and if you've just joined us, we're going to be in conversation with an ambassador for Venezuela. Of course, Venezuela at the front and center of the hearts and minds of people who stand against war and imperialism and want a world that is peaceful and prosperous. We're going to welcome into conversation because we've got a late start on this segment the Ambassador, Jesús Gómez Azuaje. We want to thank you very much for joining us this morning. While it's morning in our time, we really appreciate your time given the complexity and the imminent danger facing the people of your country.
Thank you, Shabna. Thank you. I really appreciate your invitation to participate. Hi, everyone. As you mentioned, Venezuela is facing now a very challenging situation, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the truth of Venezuela in this space.
Absolutely. We'd like to take a look at a tweet from Donald Trump where he announces essentially that an armada is surrounding Venezuela and capturing or pirating essentially Venezuelan vessels together with their oil. Kolani, if you could bring that tweet by Donald Trump, president of the US, up, and he says, Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will only get bigger, and the shock to them will be like nothing they've ever seen until such time as they return to the US. All of the oil, land, and other assets that they've previously stolen from us. And then, of course, he goes on to say, the illegitimate Maduro regime is using oil from these oil fields to finance themselves drug terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping. For the theft and assets smuggling, Venezuelan regime has been designated a foreign terrorist organization. Therefore, he's ordering a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. The illegal aliens and criminals that have been sent into the US are being returned to Venezuela, and so on and so forth. And so I think we'll stop screening that tweet by Donald J. Trump there. But I think, Ambassador, it becomes very clear, at least to those of us who understand geopolitics, that what the US government and the military-industrial complex are doing has more to do with oil and land than anything else when it comes to Venezuela. Your thoughts?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, so what we have in front of our faces, is the real mask of imperialism. It's not about democracy. It's not about human rights. It's about oil. It's about oil. According to some data, the U.S. reserves will last only for 6 to 10 years. So they are desperate. So what is happening is that they have been building different narratives to overthrow Venezuelan government. But the real objective is to take control Venezuelan strategic natural resources, but not only Venezuela. We should remember that by March last year, the former commander of South Command, Laura Richardson, during a forum with the Atlantic Council, she stated that this region matters. And she said, why? And then she numbered all the natural resources that are in this region. And she mentioned Venezuela because of oil, because of natural gas, and so on. And she started to mention about how rich is this situation. But finally, she said, so that's why this region matters. That's why we have to play harder. And this is what we are witnessing now. Is, as I mentioned before, is not about drug cartels. So the evidence demonstrates that Venezuela is not a producer. In Venezuela, we don't process. And some Colombian cartels have been trying to send the drugs, trying to use Venezuelan airspace, but has been shut down. So this is not about drug trafficking. It is not about the different narratives that they've been trying to implement with the support of the Western corporate media. So we have been witnessing a huge campaign just to try to create the conditions to justify the aggressions on Venezuela. but the real aim is controlling Venezuelan vast natural resources. As we should remember that Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. Now, 304 billion barrels, with the potential to increase to 512 billion barrels. I mean, we have oil for more than 100 years. And we also have to
Yes.
see this situation in the context of geopolitical competition around the world. When we
Yes.
when we see the different speech by different officials, congressmen, and even journalists and even pseudo experts, so they always mention the rising presence of China and Russia. I mean, and what we are now also witnessing is the implementation of the Monroe Doctrine. As you know, the US implemented the Monroe Doctrine starting in 1823, and under this doctrine, they justify in the last 200 years military interventions, coup d'etat, interference in different countries in the region. And now this is the Monroe Doctrine 2.0. They are implementing again this doctrine, but now openly. They don't hide anything. Now they say openly when we can listen Donald Trump and different U.S. officials. This is just the implementation. This is about controlling the region in the context of geopolitical competition with China and Russia.
Yes. Ambassador Gomez, we're also, and thank you very much for sharing those critical insights with us so people understand what is happening on the ground away from the lens of corporate owned mainstream media. It's essential for people to know the position and the perspective of the Venezuelan people based on the facts on the ground. We're also seeing that there was an attempt to transport oil on Chinese ships, but those Chinese ships have also been hijacked by essentially piracy represented through the US administration. Can you talk us through what happened there and what is the relationship then between Venezuela and China, given that Chinese ships have also been hijacked?
As you know, Venezuela and China have very strong relations. And an important part of Venezuelan oil is going to Chinese markets. So this attempt, what the US is doing now, is in order to suffocate Venezuelan economy. And they are just following the recommendation of the Nobel Peace Prize, who has been recommending to suffocate Venezuela to produce the overthrow and fall of Venezuelan government. As I mentioned before, Venezuela and China have very strong relations based on mutual benefit, on mutual cooperation, and our international oil trade has been mainly based on this fair relation with China. So now this is what they are trying to do. And of course, the Chinese government also just raised its voice condemning this situation, which is absolutely illegally and contrary to international law.
So, Ambassador, this is obviously a terrifying time, one would imagine, for the Venezuelan people, knowing what the history of the US war machine is around the world for centuries, that you now face imminent, ongoing and escalating attack. And the Caribbean's also been drawn into this quagmire, with Trinidad and Tobago, for example, allowing itself to be used as a conduit for this imminent invasion of Venezuela. How are the people of Venezuela feeling, and how are they preparing for an imminent attack?
So I can mention two things. First, I'm now in Venezuela, and you can see that Venezuelans are having a normal life, since also all this campaign tried to break Venezuelan moral and Venezuelan support to President Maduro. So if you go now to the streets in Venezuela, you can see that everything is going normal. But Venezuela's population has been also preparing to defend our country if needed. President Maduro called for people enlistment, and more than 8.5 million people respond, and they enlisted, and they are getting some training in order to defend our country if needed. Venezuela is ready to defend our sovereignty you should remember that we get our independence with tremendous sacrifice, where more than half of Venezuelan population died. So, and we are determined to defend our sovereignty, our freedom, our independence. And Venezuelan people is with President Maduro and with Venezuelan sovereignty.
So obviously, Ambassador, you would understand the implications for the global South. What happens to Palestine, to Sudan, to Congo, to Venezuela, to Nigeria, also with enormous reserves of oil, and there's an attempt to divide and conquer that country as well. This is a message to the global South that when you have resources, you will be attacked by what I call Zio-imperialism because they work together. How important is it for the global South and our allies in the West to stand together against warmongering? And how can we stand together taking practical action?
So President Maduro just released a letter yesterday to the leaders and the people of the world in order to, this is a call to react, because certainly Venezuela could represent the precedent, taking into account that also in some Western center of powers, they are aiming to destroy the international system as we know it currently. So we could say that some really important principles like sovereignty, independence, and on the table. And this is why Venezuela's government has been, and Venezuelan people also, has been calling the peoples of the world to react against these efforts that pretend to control natural resources everywhere, who pretend to keep their domination, who pretend to control every resistance and movements in the world. And this is time for the people of the world to react by pushing the governments to make any kind of pronunciation, because Venezuela could be just the first. I mean, today we can start by Venezuela, and then as in the region, we have the threat in the region, because it's not only Venezuela, it's also Colombia, it's also Mexico, it's also Brazil, and it's the entire region. And so Venezuela could be just a lab in order to start implementing this unprecedented policy.
Thank you, Ambassador. What we're going to do is take a short ad break, and when we come back, we'll be hearing more from Ambassador Gómez from Venezuela, and why what is happening to Venezuela is a warning to the global South, and how we can stand together as people who want peace in our world. Stay with us.
This is Salam Media.
Ah, the kitchen, the heart of the home, where memories are made and celebrated. Our go-to place for those freshly stacked pancakes early in the morning, or for that late-night snack munchies. We are in there together, cooking, eating, and celebrating life together. Let's keep the kitchen a place that is shared by everyone, where we build stronger bonds and grow together. Sunfoil, Now We Cooking. Visit nowwecooking.co.za for recipes that everyone can help make.
Across Sudan, starvation is tightening its grip. With rising food prices and widespread malnutrition, 8.7 million people are now facing emergency or famine-level hunger. As the conflict intensifies and aid routes narrow, families in Sudan are running out of options and time. The Al Imdad Foundation is delivering life-saving humanitarian aid to those most at risk. Stand with Sudan. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Hey Gulam.
Yeah?
Did I return your lawnmower last month?
No, bye, you didn't.
Oh no. Now what'll I do? I wanted to borrow it again, man.
With Rendry Jewelers, you won't have to borrow or lend because the prices are so well trimmed on all gold and diamond jewelry. Alternatively, we could remake your old jewelry into a brilliant new design. Visit Rendry Jewelers at 151 Stevens Lamini Road, Musgrave, Durban, Randry Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
Penny Appeal's Education First campaign helps children to get access to quality education.
I'm 14 years old. When I grow up, I'd like to be a scientist.
We believe every child belongs at school,
And we want education, a better education.
learning and dreaming their way to a better future. With your help, we can provide classrooms, desks, stationery packs, and school shoes. Help make these dreams a reality. Visit www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Welcome back to Salam Media, your home of humanitarian journalism. My name is Shabnam Palesa Mohamed on News and Views, standing in for Salailo and talking with the ambassador for Venezuela. The attack on Venezuela is an attack or a warning on the global south, particularly given our relationships, Ambassador, through BRICS, for example, and other multilateral cooperation agreements, and beyond agreements, just an understanding that the global south need to stand in solidarity against imperialism and neo-colonization. What do you think the global south needs to do to strengthen our relationships with each other, but also with allies in the West who understand what imperialism is and stand against the warmongering?
So I think the solidarity activity is really important. I think that the peoples of the world should stand up with Venezuela and should have some demonstrations because some countries pretend to present the public opinion that Venezuela is alone or that Venezuela is isolated. So in that regard, I think that the public opinion, the social movement, political parties, peace organizations have a very important role to play in order to demonstrate that the people of the world are aware about what the real situation is, and also to demonstrate the governments that something should be done in order to avoid any aggression that, as you mentioned before, could affect Venezuela today, but maybe some of our countries in the future.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is a very wise message. But certainly also we need practical measures such as stronger economic ties and stronger military and defense relationships. Is that something you think would be possible in the immediate future? This is not a long-term plan. It needs to happen. And we know that the Colombian president has called for international humanitarian force to defend people against imperialism and neo-colonization. Your thoughts?
Yes, this is something that President Maduro has been trying to do, and not only President Maduro. I mean, since when the Bolivarian revolution started in 1999, Venezuela adopted several national economic and social development plans, when one of the mandates is strengthening South-South cooperation, but also promoting multipolarity, promoting a closer approach with the global south. And this is also why Venezuela has been targeted. Venezuela has been supporting the formation of a different world, of a multipolar world. Venezuela has been participating in the BRICS. Unfortunately, in Russia in the summit, Russia summit. Venezuela's accession was blocked by Brazil, but Venezuela has been participating. We have been trying to diversify our relations with South countries from the global South. So Venezuela is absolutely aware about the importance of strengthening relations in different fields with, in terms of trade, in terms of education, in terms of even military cooperation with countries from the global South. In Latin America, under the Bolivarian Revolution, we implemented and we promoted the creation of the UNASUR. This is the Community of South American Nations. Under UNASUR, a defense council was established, an energy council was established, and the idea was to coordinate defense policies in order to react, in order to protect the region's interest. So Venezuela has been promoting different actions in the multilateral scenario, but also at bilateral level by strengthening relations, especially with countries from Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. I mean, South-South cooperation. Venezuela advocates for a different world. Venezuela advocates to defend multilateralism and the international law. So we have been doing some activities, strong work to promote the formation of a different world.
Is the relationship with the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago going to continue to be strained over its alignment with US imperialism, or is there an opportunity through diplomatic means to negotiate with the Caribbean and help them understand that they too are or will be victims of imperialism?
I should mention that Venezuela has, with the Caribbean region in general, an excellent relationship. So I should mention, and I was part of this, in 2004, 2005, Venezuela implemented what was called the Petro-Caribe Energy Initiative. Before 2004, mostly Caribbean countries were getting their oil through transnational companies that were buying oil from Venezuela to say something, 10 US dollar barrels, and then they resell to these small islands to 20 or 25 US dollar per barrel. So Venezuela implemented an energy cooperation initiative establishing direct channels to trade oil, and with the savings we were selling the oil to international market, and with the gap, with the savings, we promoted the creation of Petro-Caribe Fund. And with this fund, so we supported the Caribbean islands, the Caribbean community, to develop infrastructure, I mean, housing programs, airports, electricity facilities, and infrastructure in general. So Venezuela, as I mentioned before, has a strong relation with the Caribbean community, not only based on oil trade, but also based on history. So we have a strong relations, and Venezuela has been supportive with Caribbean islands. With Trinidad and Tobago, even we were having some negotiations in order to for jointly develop natural gas reserves. But the current government has been subjugated, has been submissive, and so we think that with a different government, the situation, the relation with Venezuela could change. So as I mentioned before, Venezuela always has been open to dialogue and to cooperation. And we found in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, the energy field as an opportunity to strengthen bilateral relations. So Trinidad and Tobago natural gas reserves are going down, but they have some facilities, they have some plants to process natural gas. What we were doing was discussing the unitizations, reservoirs unitizations, in order to establish mechanisms for joint development of natural gas reserves, which is also important for Trinidad and Tobago, whose economy is mainly based on natural gas. So the idea was to exploit jointly the natural resources, natural gas, to process this natural gas using plants in Trinidad and Tobago, and from there supplying the entire Caribbean region. So, but now, unluckily, because of this situation, Venezuela adopted the decision to interrupt this cooperation. But Venezuela has been always open to cooperation, to dialogue, and to support the countries in the region, and on a mutually beneficial basis. Venezuela's cooperation has never been based on conditionalities. We want to help our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean regions to improve their standard of living, to also provide them the opportunity to develop and have a better conditions of life. This is the spirit of Venezuela's cooperation.
Indeed. Very informative response there from Ambassador Gómez, the ambassador to Malaysia, Thailand, and Brunei. Ambassador, I want to talk about this idea that Donald Trump is propagating, that the oil belongs to the US and has been stolen from the US. We're seeing information clarifying actually that Venezuelan oil was actually nationalized, and that these foreign oil companies that were exploiting and extracting Venezuelan oil were asked to leave so that the oil could actually benefit the people of Venezuela. Can you give us more clarity and dispel this myth that's being propagated that oil was stolen from the US?
Well, so what happened now is we don't know what can we expect from this administration. This affirmation is absolutely insane, since, as you mentioned, Venezuela and many other countries, remember that in the 60s, in the 70s, in many oil-producing countries around the world, many nationalizations processes were implemented. Venezuela was just one of these countries, but the most important thing is that in that opportunity, American oil companies that were operating in Venezuela received the just and fair compensation for the activities that they had in Venezuela. So this is only a pretext. This is only a pretext, since the failure of the narrative about the drug cartels, about Hamas, about the presence of Hezbollah in Venezuela, and everything that they have been creating. So this is just of the narrative to justify any aggression against Venezuela. It doesn't make sense. It's absolutely contrary to international law. It's absolutely contrary to different United Nations resolutions. So this is just part of the American policy of robbery.
I think it is important to call a spade, and so I appreciate the context and the dynamic that you bring to this conversation, Ambassador Gómez. Let's talk about Venezuela's relationship with and support of the Palestinian people. In general, Latin America, the global South, and allies of the West have always and will always stand with the Palestinian people. Do you think this is one of the motives behind this aggression on Venezuela right now, apart from, of course, the land and the oil and the usual imperialist aggression? Do you think Venezuela is partially being punished for standing with the Palestinian people and oppressed people in general?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a cocktail. This is a cocktail. It's not only about oil. I mean, the oil is important piece, but also the support that Venezuela has been given to the Palestinian cause. And I should mention that before the Bolivarian revolution, the influence of Israel in Venezuela was huge. I should say that in the past, before President Chavez came to power, Mossad had a strong influence in Venezuela, and President Chavez stopped all this. Venezuela has been denouncing the aggression of Israel against the Palestinian people. And I should remember that in 2009, Venezuela was the first country in Latin America who expelled the American ambassador after denouncing the aggression on the civilian population in Palestine. So President Chavez told the ambassador of Israel, you have 48 hours to abandon Venezuela. And of course, remember that also the control that the Zionist lobby has in the US. So without any doubt, Venezuela's position regarding Palestine has also an important part regarding the American policy towards Venezuela. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that the woman who has been calling for military intervention in Venezuela, and I mean the lady who got the Nobel Peace Prize, has been also having very close relations with Israel. He has a political party called Venezuela, something like Come Venezuela, who signed an agreement for a strategic cooperation with Likud, the party of Benjamin Netanyahu. But also in 2020, she sent a letter to Benjamin Netanyahu asking military intervention in Venezuela. She has been supporting publicly and openly the genocide in Palestine. So definitely this situation has also related with Venezuela's position regarding Palestine. No doubt about this.
So that is some very important clarity there from Ambassador Gómez, talking about not only Venezuela's relationship with Palestine and the oppressed in general, but also how Venezuelan people are being subjected to the usual divide and conquer tactics by Zio-imperialism. Of course, one also has to question, Ambassador, what is the significance and the purpose of the Nobel Peace Prize when it can be given to people like Barack Obama, whose administration dropped perhaps more bombs than anyone else in the US warmongering history? And so therefore, that was indeed a red flag that this person was given this Nobel Peace Prize. In fact, anyone that has to be questioned with very close scrutiny. We'd like to take a look, Ambassador, at a couple of posters of solidarity from people in the West standing with Venezuela. Olani, if we could bring those posters up. So, U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth wanted for war crimes in the Caribbean, guilty of bombing fishing boats, killing innocent civilians, and escalating war in Latin America with U.S. taxpayer dollars. And we'll talk about that shortly. The next poster, Olani. This was Saturday, 6 December. 65 plus cities will say no to war on Venezuela. And of course, various cities and actions reflected as part of those actions. And the last one, Olani, I think there were just those two. This was, of course, that shattering moment many of us observed, U.S. forces having just seized a Venezuelan oil tanker. Trump is now actively trying to destroy Venezuela's oil exports, really an act of piracy. Ambassador, I want to talk about the fact that there are indeed allies in the West who stand with Venezuela because it is the right thing to do from a humanitarian perspective, but also recognizing that, you know, resources and budgets are extracted from US and other Western taxpayer budgets, where they need those budgets for their own healthcare and education and social systems, and then used to support the military-industrial complex in order to attack countries for their resources. The only beneficiaries here are these corporations and, by extensions, the politicians that work with them, but not the people of the West. How critical is it for people in the West to wake up exponentially fast and stand against imperialism?
It's absolutely critical, since, as we can see, the Western elites are not fighting because of the people's interest. Just only this is part of the imperial process, just accumulating the wealth without providing the people the satisfaction of basic needs. So we can see daily in the news the situation that peoples in the U.S. has been facing, and the rising poverty, the rising inflation, the rising social critical situation. This is something that also the people in Western societies has been realizing. I mean, they are even the day after day, they have realized that the elites, the political and economic elites, that are only trying to get richer and richer and richer, and they don't care about the people.
So, Ambassador Gómez, as we approach, 2030, this major milestone in the world's development, and an increasing monopoly from what we call the 1% to control the world's people, the world's resources, the world's land, and depopulate regions in various ways, including through imperialism. What then, Ambassador, is the role of, for example, the United Nations? I was at a talk a couple of weeks back, and I asked this question of a very renowned South African international law professor. What is the role of the United Nations? Albert Einstein said doing the same thing, expecting a different result, is a symptom of insanity. Can we still rely on the United Nations and institutions like it, or do we need to build a whole new mechanism for cooperation, for peace building, for us as the 99%?
So while some countries has been trying to destroy the multilateral system by violating, in I will say that permanently manner, the Charter of the United Nations, Venezuela has been advocating to promote and defend this Charter of the United Nations and its principles. So every aggression has been denounced before the United Nations. President Maduro has sent several letters to United Nations Secretary General, but also has been asking meetings at the Security Council. Venezuela believes that United Nations still have an important role to play in order to avoid the escalation and aggression against Venezuela. We think this is a time for United Nations to demonstrate how effective this can be in protecting and safeguarding the international law and the principles that has been established by the humanity after the Second World War.
Indeed, Venezuela has requested a meeting with the UN Security Council. This has been reported 3 days ago, and I'm not sure if there's been a response yet, Ambassador, to that request.
Not yet, not yet. We have been receiving the support of strong allies in the Security Council. So I think that just was waiting for the response to this request.
And just lastly, as we start to round up this very informative conversation, Trump has said it would be smart for Venezuela's Maduro to step down. This news coming in 13 hours ago on various platforms. What is the response of the Venezuelan people to Trump's call for Maduro to step down?
Venezuela's people strongly support President Maduro. And you know that one of the effect of these threats is that Venezuela's people support is even stronger now, including some former opposition supporters. People is aware that Venezuela wants peace. Now 96%, 95% of population rejects the idea of any military intervention. Venezuelan people wants to continue on the path of development and peace. So Venezuela's people strongly support President Maduro and all his efforts to protect Venezuelan sovereignty, but also to promote peace.
Thank you, Ambassador Gómez. I just want to thank you very much and say hasta la victoria siempre. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning. We will continue to have conversations together as we build a world for the 99% and long live the Venezuelan people. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Shabnam, for the invitation, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you some views, important views regarding the situation in Venezuela. Some information that many people ignore, since the Western media, corporate media, just is trying to promote the narrative to justify any aggression on Venezuela. So thank you so much. I really appreciate, and on behalf of the Venezuelan government and Venezuelan people, I should express our gratitude for this opportunity to talk about the reality, the real situation in my country. Thank you so much. And
it's an absolute honor.
Participants.
It's an absolute honor. Thank you very much. Ambassador Gómez, they're the ambassador of Venezuela to Malaysia, Thailand, and Brunei, joining us in an empowering conversation. We'll certainly invite him back to the show right here on Salam Media, your home of humanitarian journalism. We are going to play for you on a different link, a very important video called Fired Up. You'll be able to watch it on Salam Media's YouTube and Facebook streaming as well. So do look out for that important video to get you fired up for the year ahead. We do want to also highlight there has been a funeral. Suleiman Ahmed Asmal, husband of Aisha Asmal, father of Ahmed and Umar Asmal and Tasneem Kasimji. The Mayyit will be in Amshloti Heights in Verulam and Janaza at the Jamia Masjid across the Verulam market after Zohar Salat. To Allah we belong and to God we return. Thank you to everyone who's joined us for today's episode of News and Views. Shabnam, Palesa, Mohamed standing in for Salailo. We'll be back tomorrow with some informative, engaging and empowering content right here on Salam Media, your home of humanitarian journalism. Take care. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.